It's a gorgeous day, Poppy. Sun shining. That means it's a poppy day, isn't it? Let's go see what's in the garden. We do so love to get your comments, but I had one or two that really made me smile. The fact that we have a 5-foot tall hoop cloche over the onions. Now let me put it out there on record. You do not need a 5-foot tall hoop cloche over your onions. They don't grow that tall. But you know, in all seriousness, at this time of the year, myself and Mrs. W often begin filming, and the day is exactly like this. But then within a couple of hours or so, the black clouds have come over and the rain is falling. And that's exactly what happened the day that we popped these onions into the plots. We'd already begun filming, and then the black clouds came over and we thought it is going to absolutely throw it down any moment. For those of you that have followed our channel for a while, you'll know that here was where our sprouts were, hence the tall cloche. It was the nearest thing to hand, so that's why we put that over these onions on this occasion. But I emphasize again, you don't need something that's this tall. Now in today's programme, it's part 2 of the Calabrese Grow Along. Play the music, Mrs. W. And by the magic of film, the next time you see me, this will be down to here. Hello and welcome back to the New Dig Norfolk Gardener. As I said, by the magic of film, we now have a much shorter hoop cloche over our onions. If you remember back in the autumn, after we'd cut these strawberry plants from the mother plants that are out there in our main strawberry bed, we then potted them up and they've been bubbling away nicely over the winter period. But now we've taken them out of those pots and we've actually put them into these planters. It's a great way to use undercover spaces, whether it be a polytunnel like ours or whether it be a greenhouse. You've got some of these butcher's hooks and these hanging baskets. There are 9 plants per basket. We've actually got more strawberries in this polytunnel than we actually have out in the beds. Being in the polytunnel, of course, they should also harvest earlier. Hello, Poppy. There are no strawberries ready yet, sweetheart. Oh, I'm sorry, but there's none ready yet. But there will be.
She is quite partial to a strawberry, isn't she?
She is. Another reason to have them up at this height.
Yes. And that also means that we get a harvest because the grandchildren can't always reach it.
No, that too. It's no good getting older without getting wiser.
Exactly.
So yeah, we have actually in the whole polytunnel, there's some on the other side too, but we have 8 hanging baskets, 9 plants in each. They will give us some nice harvest and we should be able to at least double our capacity of strawberries that we can grow. And we do so love a strawberry. Also being in the polytunnel, they should come earlier. These plants are more than ready to go in. We've got the first set of true leaves. And actually the roots are coming out of the bottom.
They've been sitting in some sort of elevated above some water and they've obviously found their way into the water.
Now, you don't have to plant these plants at this stage. I know there are people out there that actually like to Make sure that they're about 5-6 inches tall before they put them in. Maybe you have problems with slugs and you like the plants to be a bit bigger and stronger to be able to withstand any attacks. But for myself and Mrs. W, this is exactly the right size. They are 4 weeks old, a little over, and we don't tend to see too much problems from slugs on the beds, probably because with the compost it's quite hard and sharp and they're not so keen on crawling over things. We do have a slight problem in the polytunnel, don't we?
We do.
And I noticed that Ken left in his comments that he's quite overrun by slugs. So it's kind of thinking, Mrs. W, we probably need to do, a video about different ways of controlling slugs, just to help people along. But these are ready for us to go in now. Now we've had quite a lot of rain here over the last few months, but I can still see it's draining away really quickly. New digger's working really well, Mrs. W.
Yeah, it's good.
It's not standing there in a pool. And the reason why I like to water the holes first and then let it drain away is because I often find that the roots will go down to the moisture and they can anchor themselves into the ground and they will be well adversed and trained to go down into the ground and seek the water. Whereas in the past, when I've watered from the top, the roots can very often stay near the surface. If you pamper them too much, they're just going to think, oh, that nice Mr. W is going to come along and give me some water. And of course, that's not good for your water bills. You want them to go down deep into the ground to find that water. But not only for that, brassicas can often suffer with windrock. We have quite a windy garden. When it does blow, it blows across the garden, doesn't it, Mrs. W?
Yeah, it is a windy garden sometimes. And it can rock the plants and break the little fine roots, so they don't get such a good hold and they're less likely to thrive then, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly right. Well, that water's drained away now, Mrs. W, so we can get on with planting. When it comes to brassicas, the wider that you space them, the bigger the hedge you will get. So if you were to space these 2 foot or more apart, 60 centimetres or more apart, you're going to get exhibition-sized heads. And actually, if you look back on our playlist, you'll see occasions when I've spaced them exactly like that. But that was back in the days when we still had the kids here. Matthew was still here, wasn't he? Sasha was still here.
Yeah.
But there is these days only myself and Mrs. W. We don't need a huge head. We just need enough for us to be able to enjoy a nice meal of Calabrese. There it is. Look at that, Mrs. W.
That root has definitely been on a journey, hasn't it?
You see how the roots have filled the
Actual
cell?
cell, yes, yeah. Let me get a bit closer so we can have a proper look.
And that's just 4 weeks. Actually, is there an onion seed there?
I think there is. Who sowed the Calabrese? Was it me or you?
I'm going to say it's you. Anyway, that's not going to make any difference here. And then we just pop it into the hole. And we like to plant them nice and deeply. And that's it. We don't need to do anything else with that now. So let's get the next one. It's equally as good. Looking so good, Mrs. W.
Fantastic.
And I'm going to be putting 3 into here. Into this row. Let's pop you in there. And that's the first 3 Calabrese in this row. If you remember, when we were sowing, as I said, we want to be continually sowing them month after month, because with Calabrese, if you sow a huge long row, they're all going to come ready at the same time. And the one thing that we have found over the years, haven't we, Mrs. W, is that they don't really freeze that well, do they?
No, I've not. If there is a good way of freezing them, I haven't found it. If anybody's got any hints and tips, please let me know. Yeah, whenever I've tried it, I tend to lose the heads off. They go mushy, the little green florets sort of disappear, and I just get frozen stalks, which are nice, but not as nice as having the proper stuff.
Exactly. And we always like to think, wherever we can, it's best to harvest something on the day that you want to eat. It will be at its very best. There are certain vegetables that you can freeze, and they freeze very successfully. Peas, beans, they freeze really well, don't they?
Yeah.
In fact, we had some at the freezer the other day.
We did. There's some of the French beans, and I think we've got one more serving left, and then we'll be waiting for this year's. But
they were absolutely gorgeous. They really were. But things like Calabrese, cauliflower is another one. It does the same with the heads there. They just don't seem to freeze as well, do they?
But they are a little bit more successful than the broccoli, I find. But yeah.
Now, while I'm here, I'm going to complete the row with the cauliflower and the cabbage that we also sowed mid-February and are now equally ready to go out into the ground. That's the 3 Providence cabbage. We discovered that last year, didn't we? And
it's a lovely cabbage.
It is, and it holds well in the ground. We've still got 4 over there.
Poppy, come on.
And they are the 2 cauliflowers.
Brilliant.
So 3 Calabrese, 3 cabbages, and 2 cauliflowers, all within this row. 18 inches apart in both directions that will be, and the space that you see here, the seeds that we actually sowed, was it a week ago?
Yes.
Yes, it was a week ago, wasn't it? They will be set out into this plot this time next month, so 4 weeks' time. These represent our greens for the month of June, and when those other seedlings go in there next month, they will represent our greens for the month of July. I do often get asked, or comments are made in the comments section, I can't really grow brassicas. They either don't form a head, or the buttons on my sprouts are really loose. Can you advise? Well, the most important thing when you're planting brassicas is to plant them into firm ground. When they're planted into loose soil, that's when you get loose heads, loose buttons on your sprouts. It's probably the single most important thing that you can do. And that's not so much a problem for us because we're no dig. This soil is not inverted, it's not turned over, so the soil is always firm. Not compacted, always firm. But if you are watching this video and you're not no dig like us, what I would do is just tread the ground before you set these plants into the ground. Now that will be firm and your plants will like it all the better. And it applies to each and every brassica plant that you're going to put into your plots. Always ensure the ground is firm. And then we need to make a cloche to cover them with, and I know those of you that have been following us for a little while, you've seen us do this before, but I think some of the new subscribers have asked how we make the cloches. They're really simple and easy and quick to actually make, and we prefer using this method because all you have to do is to take the stones or bricks, whatever you're using, away, and you can get under there to be able to weed, do whatever else you need to do. When it comes to watering, the EnviroMesh that we use, the insect mesh, it lets 90% of the light through and it will let water pass. So when it comes to those jobs, you don't actually have to lift the netting. And it's just a question of putting the netting over, and then we just keep it down with, well, whatever we've got. We've got some stones, bricks, slab, bits of slab, haven't we, Mrs. W?
Yeah. We try not to use wood because we find that does seem to attract slugs a bit, doesn't it? So
yeah, you're right. Good point. Good point. And that is quickly and easy how to make a hooped cloche for your plants. Now we have to have these over our brassicas simply because there's woodland behind us. Our neighbours have trees. There's a lot of pigeons around here. Hungry pigeons, they do love a brassica and they will nibble the leaves. Also, when we let the chickens out, it stops them from having a peck at things. I don't want them going after the grubs in the garden. In fact, it's great for us to be able to do. And they love being out, don't they?
they do. Yeah, they're really happy.
They seem to produce much better eggs too.
Yes. That's the bonus of it all, isn't it?
Oh, yes. And of course, these covers will then again come into their own. Once we get to sort of late May and into early June, we start to see the cabbage white butterflies flying about. And they will keep those clean and clear of those eggs being laid on them. Now, I know that there are other things you can use, but we choose not to do that. I don't like to put anything on my plants if I can possibly help it. This is a natural way to do it. They don't get sprayed with anything, but they do stay nice and clean. And no dig, of course, really helps because these covers don't have to come off too often for us to be able to weed. So that really helps with that. Now do let us know how you've been getting on with your Calabrese plants. If you sowed in or around the time that we sowed ours, are yours at the same stage as ours? Have you already popped yours into the ground? Of course, it really varies upon where you live. If you live in the north, in Scotland, it ain't going to be right for you to plant these out yet. But for us here, we're just past the midway point in March. That's fine. Brassicas, they can withstand some light frost. It's not going to really hurt them. But as we said earlier, windrock can be a problem. Those fine little roots that they send out, they do a lot of the feeding. So you don't really want them to be rocking about, and these cloches will just stop that from happening. In the same really that we've done with the onions that we put out in the last video. Onions again, they're more than frost hardy, but they don't like the cold winds. So just by covering them, yes, you are protecting them from the allium leaf miner, but also you are protecting them from those really cold winds. So do let us know what stage you're at. You may only have just sowed yours depending on where you've lived. And we do so love to get all of your comments, not just on specifics, whether you've sown something, whether you've planted something, but your gardening journey, what's happening in your garden. It's really quite inspiring and uplifting when I hear your comments, I read them down there, and you've told me what you've planted and what's going on, you're harvesting this. It's amazing, absolutely amazing. Now, do have a great gardening week, won't you? And we shall see you back here in our No Dig Norfolk garden on Thursday.